BSides DC would like to thank all of our sponsors, and a special thank you to all of our speakers, volunteers, and organizers for making 2018 a success.
Thanks for coming. This is my my very first BSides speaking engagement. Not only my first speaking engagement at BSides, but actually my first time at BSides. I'm aware of BSides and I've seen the videos online, and attended a lot of other hacker conferences like DEF CON and that sort of thing, but I've never been to BSides. So actually I really am very excited to be here and to be speaking. It's really fun. I actually love the whole concept of BSides, and one of the principals, right, even though I've not been engaged deeply with them. We do have a BSides Nashville, which I'm from Nashville, and which I'm beginning to get engaged with, but we haven't done a lot. I haven't done a lot with it yet. But what I love about the philosophy is it's all about expanding the conversation and participation. Right? They say there's no wallflowers, there's no observers, but we're all our participants in this conversation. And I love that because and it is relevant somewhat to what I'm talking about, that in the security industry, and one of the things I love about the security industry is it's very open door policy, right? We want to share. We don't look at ourselves, by and large, security professionals, right, as belonging to a company or whatever. I happen to work, it doesn't say it up here, but you'll see in a minute, excuse me, at Assurion, but my work doesn't belong to Assurion. Now, Assurion may think that, but really, we see ourselves as a part of the entire security industry, and our work being relevant to not only the whole industry, to our nation perhaps, our community, and to the whole world, right? I mean, we are sharing across nations, we are sharing all around the globe, and we are constantly trying to improve the security across the board. It's not this competitive, profit-driven market only, right? It is, of course, there's that aspect of it. We got vendors out there to like sponsor these events and help us to do things, but in general, the industry is extremely open, and I just love that about that, and BSides, it particularly embodies that spirit. So I just love that, and I'm really thankful to be here. And it's not my talk. I'll get into this in a moment, but isn't so much a hacker talk. I know BSides origins is from the hacker community, but I guess just before I get started, I wanted to say one thing to you guys that is tangential to my discussion, but it's just that what you guys do, assuming you're white hats, and I know that the vast majority of us are white hats, or gray hats at least, what you do is incredibly important. And every single person in this room has a role to play in this conversation. And you don't have to be a leader in the industry, and you don't have to be the most awesome researcher in the industry. I mean, we've got both ends of that spectrum there. But whatever your role is incredibly important. And we all go through times where we're thinking like, am I in the right job? Am I in the right line of business? Why is it not moving forward in the way I wanted it to move forward? I just want to encourage you that you have a role. You have an individual role to play. In like my faith tradition, we use the image of a body, right? And the community is like a body. And every part of that body is significant. Parts of that body all have different roles. But every part of that body is incredibly important to the functioning of the whole. And that's the way all of us are. Whatever your role is, find it. What your purpose is, find it, seize it, and do it to the best of your ability, diligently, with integrity, and you will have a significant impact. Not only on whatever it may be. It may not be on a global scale, but you're going to have significant impact. And so I just want to encourage you guys with that you're in an incredibly important industry. What you do all the time matters. I mean, there are jobs that may feel like sometimes they don't matter. What you're doing is incredibly important. You don't have to be defending a country from a hostile nation state to be doing something that's important. You are protecting people's privacy, you are protecting people's resources, you're giving people peace of mind, which is super, super important to the quality of people's life. What you do is really significant. Whether you're on the offense side, you're on the defense side, you're on the build side, break side, whatever it is, what you're doing is really important. So I just wanted to start with that and let you guys know to carry on and do the work with passion and with diligence. And you're the warriors and defenders in a sense of the world in our day and age. So with that, hopefully some of you are Nacho Libre fans. If not, I'm sorry for you. It's if you've only seen it once and didn't appreciate it, watch it again. I didn't appreciate it the first time I saw it. Second time I saw it, thought it was really funny. I began to appreciate the humor. But of course, there's this line in there that's a classic. That's who is this Encarnacion, right? This girl that he's interested in. But who am I? Why am I here? And why am I speaking? Is what I just wanted to kick off with. Whoops, someone hacked my presentation, probably Casey Rossini. I do like smiling. Smiling is my favorite thing, but that was the wrong picture. There he is. My background has been primarily as a developer. So that's a lot of times the case with AppSec folks. A lot of times, everybody's different, but a lot of, in general, folks with development backgrounds do very well in application security. And that's my background. So I was, and it actually is more in line with my temperament and my love, and what I enjoy is building things and designing things and analyzing complicated problems and then seeing them come to life in code solutions. So I did that for many, many years, worked for many companies in the industry of all sorts and shapes. But I was always interested in security. That was actually my concentration in my undergraduate degree. But I was operating in the field as a developer with a security focus. Eventually I turned to the dark side because of this personality flaw where I was just always asking questions, always checking assumptions, always questioning, right? And that's the attribute that really makes a great security professional, whether it's defense, offense, right? Asking questions, challenging assumptions, recognizing what the assumptions are, and then unearthing them and then challenging them. Are they correct? What happens when you remove those assumptions? So I just have that kind of personality. It annoys sometimes my wife, and that I just ask too many questions. I'm not satisfied until I feel like I thoroughly understand something. So I got into the security industry. I worked for Intuit Financial Services business unit, which is now, they've been sold off. But they used to do a lot of online banking at 2,000 banks that they provided mobile and online banking to, that folks didn't even realize that about Intuit. But I was leading their AppSec team, leading the Citrix SaaS business unit, all of those go-to products. And now I'm at Asurion, which is a pretty large but privately held company most people haven't heard about, but it's behind a lot of stuff that you may not realize because it's white labeled most of the time. And I'm also instructor for the SANS Institute. If you guys are familiar with SANS and their training, I actually teach, and I'm a contributor to the content of their new Secure DevOps course, the Dev 540, which is Secure DevOps and Cloud Application Security. And then I teach their Java, and then I also teach the Web App Pen Testing, which is the 542 class. So that's me, enough of me. Oh, this is my real purpose for living is my family, my wife, my 3 daughters, and my son. So I do like travel, which is why I had that picture up there of me before the old city. But love traveling. So what's this talk about? I'd love to walk around, but he says I'll get feedback if I walk over here. So can't do any somersaults or anything. But if you're looking for the sexy stuff, a new exploit, this is the wrong talk, sorry. Maybe you stick with me anyway, but no new 0 days. I'm not going to publish a new open source tool for you, although I'd love to do that. That's going to do something for you. No black ops. I'm going to want to talk about building and defending. So this is a defender's talk by and large, as you probably guessed from the title. Pushed the wrong button. That's a problem with me. So what I really want to talk about is how to secure a DevOps environment, right? And for a lot of folks, it's becoming less so today, but it's still very, very widespread amongst the security industry that they think that's an oxymoron, right? Secure DevOps. You cannot have a secure DevOps environment. Full disclosure, right? About 4 years ago, I drank the DevOps Kool-Aid, and I've been a religious devotee of the movement ever since. So it's, I haven't really looked back. But it's, so that's where I'm coming from. I wasn't initially there, but about 4 years ago, I made that kind of switch. And when you really get in deep into what DevOps is doing, what the philosophy of DevOps is, and if you actually embrace the philosophy and you are consistent in implementing that philosophy, it actually improves security, the security environment. So the problem is that most organizations have like this haphazard kind of DevOps sort of implementation. They're like, yeah, we want to be DevOps, because like developers, and I know I was the same way, we all want to be free from all those restrictions. We all want to do our own thing. We don't want to be independent. We don't want to document anything. We don't want to have any controls. We don't want any roadblocks. We just want to move as fast as we want, use whatever tools we want, pull in any open source we want, and deploy whenever we want, right? And so DevOps goes, yes, this is what we've been looking for. Let's push this as the new cool thing. So it's, for first it was Agile, right? And that kind of got us halfway there, and now it's DevOps. So, but actually, there's a lot more to DevOps than that. So it's not just this liberation of developers, right? There's a DevOps, right? The ops folks want stability. They've always wanted stability, quality and stability. The dev folks have always wanted speed, freedom, flexibility, new stuff, new shiny things. Bringing those two together into a single unit that owns the whole product from cradle to grave, right, is the whole power of DevOps. That organizational unit, the DevOps team, if you want to call it that, the product team, owns the product, head to tail, cradle to grave, and is responsible for that product. They can't push anything off on a different organization. And that ownership aspect is really the key. That's the whole thing. If you don't actually take ownership of that product and every aspect of that product, including security, although we don't have the sec in there yet, we just have DevOps, then you're not really living DevOps. You're not really embracing the philosophy. You're just using it as an excuse to be irresponsible in a lot of ways. Clicked on that a little early, but the key thing to making DevOps secure is this idea of an embedded, it's not rocket science. You're gonna think, okay, I've heard all this before. The embedded application security engineer in every one of these teams, every one of these DevOps teams. So, highly competent, trained application security engineer in every team. So you gotta say, oh yeah, it's security champions, right? We know that. Security champions, the concept's been around for, I don't know, more than a decade, right? It's, I pushed it into it. I've used it before. And it's the idea, right, that we're gonna take all these liaisons out there, these deputies, if you will, in the teams, deputize them as the security liaison, as a security representative. They're an engineer of some sort or whatever. might be a product manager, might be anyone on the team, but they'll be deputized as our representatives. And they become our security champion. We give them some training, we get together once a month or something like that. You know, we inspire one another, we might send them to some conferences or something like that. But I'm not talking about that. It's very similar, I mean, it's just a little twist on that, but it's not security champions. I deliberately didn't call our team at Asurion security champions. I call them security mavens, just sort of be cool. So it's, I'm not the first to use that term, but maven is a connoisseur and an expert, right? Sigil used it years ago, but I call them security mavens instead of security champions, so I want to distance myself from what everybody thought. I know what a security champion is. And so what we want to do is not have liaisons that have some training. We want to actually have full-blown AppSec experts in these teams. So they don't have to be the world's greatest AppSec expert, but they need to be someone we can really consider, hey, you're an application security expert. I would like them to be, ideally, know everything I know. And in some cases, and some of my folks, they actually have, we've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, they've exceeded me. They're off talking at all kinds of conferences. They're contributing all kinds of tools to the open source security community, and they've become bona fide application security globally recognized experts, a couple of them. So that's awesome. That's exactly what I want. That's what I would love to do. I don't feel threatened by it. I'll get into that in a minute. It's like they're going to take my job away. But they are dedicated to their product teams, right? They work in their product teams, and they are part of that product team. They're a natural part of that product team. We're not like sticking them in a new product team, right? But they are, we're investing in them even more, in my company's case, than we invest in training our central security organization staff. So we're pouring the money into training these AppSec experts. They're in the team, and I can go into a lot more of why this works really well. But you know, it's I'll go into that. That's actually probably like the next 20 minutes of this talk here. It's going to be going into the details. Well, how do you do that? Because what I'm saying sounds like it's an awful lot of money, right? They have to be putting an application security expert in every single team. So, and that's why the title of this talk is actually DevOps application security teams for the rest of us. Because it would be extremely expensive if you went out and hired all these people. And that's what companies like Google and Netflix and Microsoft do. They have tons of money to pour into their security programs, tons of money they're pouring into their application security programs. Application security has traditionally been kind of the smallest piece of the security budget, unfortunately, over the years. But they pour in a lot of money into that. They're hiring an army of application security experts. That's the easy way, quote unquote, to do this, right? But most of us have no way we're going to be able to afford that. You know how expensive to hire just one AppSec person is, and this is what you got to keep in mind, and this is what you need to keep in front of the conversation when you're selling this idea to the company and to the management and to the executives. Just one AppSec expert is going to cost you, you know, when you count all the overhead, when you count all that goes into it, quite a lot of money, right? At least $200,000, right? Maybe more. Because it's, you know, their salary is only like half of the cost, right? Maybe 60% or something like that, 70%. So it's going to be at least 200 grand. What if you've got, like my company, we have over 70 current journey teams. Journey teams is a Spotify model of Agile, right? You can think of it as a Scrum team, or you can think of it as a 2-pizza team, right? Which is like Amazon's model. But we've got over 70 of those, and we're expecting to have probably over 100 within the next 6 months. So how could you possibly hire 100, or even if you had them represent 2 teams, 50 AppSec experts? Ridiculously expensive, right? So that's what this whole thing is about. How do you do this and do it in a cost-effective way, but it's not just about money. It's actually a lot more to it than that. If this whole thing, in fact, I think it's better than hiring those AppSec experts for a lot of reasons, to do it internally by training people. So before we go into that, a few potential alternatives of how do we do AppSec well in a DevOps world, right? And these are alternatives that hopefully most of you have given up a while ago, but I see them still. I see security folks pushing this stuff still, and it just doesn't work. So there's security through edict, right? And this is still a big thing. I got people I know that still say this stuff. Hey, we write a policy, we write a procedure, this is the security procedure, these are the requirements, they have to follow them, right? I mean, they just have to follow them, those fools. Why aren't they doing what we've established? And we need to hold them accountable for that. I think most of you know, if you've been around for a while, writing a security policy has very little value except you provide it to your auditors, right? when they come in and say, hey, do you have a security policy, blah, 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 blah? Yeah, here it is, okay? No one has ever read it except the person that wrote it, but we have one. And they generally don't have a lot of value except covering you, right? When you say, hey, you have to have policies. It's true, you have to have them. But the fact that you've just written a policy and you said what people need to do doesn't mean they're going to do it. In fact, most of the time they don't. Nobody reads them. Even if you explain it to them, if it turns out it's impractical or it doesn't work in their situation or whatever the case may be, they ignore it. Usually then they just risk management, right? They'll take the consequences if in fact something goes wrong. So security through edict never works, but still many central CISO organizations try to implement their security this way. Whoops, I just lost my mic. Probably dead battery or something. That's perfect timing. I actually wanted to, in case you guys don't know how, let me see this here. I don't know if the sound will come all over from the video. We'll see. See that? Oh, you're getting it? Oh, okay, you're not going to hear it. Sorry. I could blast his ear out maybe with the volume like that. Yeah. But I'll just play it for you. You'll have to... Ooh, sucky, right? If you've seen that, if you've seen this part of it, right? I know it's a crappy video. But very sucky! Yes, it's very sucky! Okay, so with that in mind, yes indeed, very sucky. See if this comes back up. Security by edict is very sucky, right? It's just, it's not sucky, it's very sucky. It just doesn't work, right? You need the policies, sure, we need those. Ideally, in a DevOps world, those policies get implemented. We're not going to go into all of this, but they get implemented in your pipeline, your CI/CD pipeline. Your CI/CD pipeline actually becomes, in fact, the policy guarantor, right? That actually enforces your policy, and in which you can demonstrate to an auditor that you actually follow your policy. I don't know if you can hear me way back there as I scream. Yeah, okay. I don't know if he wants me to keep talking. Okay. That's in a DevOps world, we're not going all into automation. The automation, the CI/CD pipeline is critical, right, to operate in a secure manner in a DevOps environment. But it is, it's just a piece of the pie. More important than that, even than that, although that's critical, is actually this whole concept we're talking about here of having the embedded security knowledge in the team, Because that's the way DevOps works. You've got to be a self-contained team that owns every aspect of that product. How do you own security if you don't have security expertise? Hello? Hey, okay, now I can save my vocal cords. Okay, so I gotta make sure I finish early so we can at least have a few minutes for questions if you have them. Okay, security through tooling. We've all seen this. I think there's a talk tomorrow about DevSecOps, and I don't know the gentleman, I don't know anything about his company, I don't know anything about him, so I'm not saying one thing either way. But he does talk about this issue of tooling, I saw from the abstract, and about how, and you guys have seen this, right? We think if we just get the right tools in place, it'll kind of, security will happen, right? And we've got the central organization is sort of driving that and monitoring those tools. We just need to get the tools in place. And I think most of you probably know, no, that is not going to work. Yes, that one is also very sucky. Tools are critical, but by themselves, without that structure in place, the human structure in place, the organizational structure in place to actually implement them, they're almost useless. I mean, they could actually be worse than useless in some cases, because you've got stuff running and you're not doing anything about it. There's actually an element where you can actually make yourself more liable, right? If you've got the knowledge, but you're at your fingertips and you're not actually managing that knowledge properly. So, I mean, we've seen this with WAFs in the old days. When I was at Intuit, we bought some WAFs, some Impervo WAFs. Nothing against them, they were really good tools. But we recommended against getting them. They bought them anyway, they put them in place, mostly for compliance purposes, to kind of cover us while we were fixing all our cross-site scripting and all that kind of stuff from a PCI perspective. But we were just getting this continuous feed of information that required a pretty experienced expert to look at them and go, hey, is this a real issue? Is this a real issue? Is this a real issue? That went on for about 6 months. We go, we don't have a full-time staff person to watch this stuff. And it just sort of slowly faded away. And within like 9 months, they were just sitting there in bypass mode, right? Non-blocking mode, just doing nothing, but gathering a bunch of statistics that we never looked at. So that's just one example. Actually, it's a true story. No, nothing against them. They had a very, very, very small team when we came there. They had no AppSec team. The company I currently worked in, when I got there, I found out they had Fortify. They had bought a bunch of licenses of Fortify. They had been paying for it every year for like 3 years. It had never even been installed, right? So they didn't have anyone that knew what to do with it. And even if they had installed it, and you say, hey guys, you got to start using this static analysis tool, the other problem is they'll start using it and they don't know what to do with the results because they've got 5,000 issues and it's just they're overwhelmed with noise, right? So you've got to manage the tools properly, which takes a lot of care and feeding, and therefore you need the organizational structure in place for that. So security through gating. This one I still hear a lot. We just need the gates in place. Let the DevOps guys do what they want, but then we need the gates in place before they release, right? They're going to have to go through this checklist or whatever it is with security. Whatever your gate process is, it's, I would say this is sucky, but not very sucky, because it is a step in the right direction, but you need to move away from the whole gate. You probably know if you've been around the DevOps folks much, they hate the word even gate, right? No gates, guardrails, like Netflix says, right? Guardrails, but not gates. Give us the guardrails of where we can run and we can run freely and we can move at our own speed. Don't put gates there. Because if you put a gate, the minute you put a gate in the way of the product teams, suddenly you've completely impeded their progress. You've removed their autonomy, and autonomy is key for DevOps philosophy, the autonomy of the teams. You've removed it. They're now going to the central organization for approval again, and they are going to, they're going to buck on that, man, big time. So, but, you know, it may be a stage that you go through to get there. It just realized it's out of step with DevOps. So security through consulting. So it's this is different flavors of this, right? You bring in the big consulting company and they gonna fix everything for you. Not so much even talking about that, although that happens a lot. You can do it internally. You can say, hey, we've got all these security folks, right, already. They're not AppSec, but they know security. And so we're gonna actually have them be our AppSec embedded experts in the product teams, right? But of course, they're not really embedded. They're in the central organization, but they're going to kind of be the consultants, the coaches. They're going to drop in occasionally to the teams. They're going to say, hey guys, have you thought about privacy? Are you aware of GDPR? Are you aware of our crypto standards? Are you guys encrypting everything? Using TLS, right? Hopefully, they'll do stuff like that. And then they like, woo, parachute out or whatever. Plane comes by like in Batman, pulls them right out of there. So and then they drop in again maybe later. So they're not really an integral part of the team. They're just this consultant that drops in. There's a place for that, but that doesn't solve the problem. Because the application security world, as folks are moving very quickly, making decisions literally probably every day, maybe every few days, right? They have releases sometimes multiple times a day if you're doing continuous delivery, continuous deployment. Not saying you have to do that, obviously, in a DevOps world, but a lot of companies do. And so it's not sufficient to have an outside source for a number of reasons. One, they're just not there enough. They're not present at those decisions that are being made. But secondly, it has all of these have a problem, fundamental problem. They're not embracing the DevOps philosophy of the autonomous team that contains everything they need to move forward. You still have them dependent on this outside team. You can say, well, so what? Maybe we're just not pure DevOps, right? Or whatever. Well, what it ends up doing is they still do not take ownership of security if you do it this way. If someone else is always responsible for the security of your systems, then you will always say, well, security, we had the representative. They said it was good to go. They said we were approved. They approved our release, right? You might know there's stuff in there that is not cool, but security approved it. It's not even like they're deliberately kind of trying to hide under that. It's just they don't own it. I mean, just think of legal, right? Your legal organization. You go, hey, if legal approved this contract with this vendor, that's their job. I'm not going to read through that thing. I don't need to worry about whether it's got some clause in there that's going to hurt the company. That's legal's job. And that's the same thing that happens if you continue to have that security ownership outside of those product development teams. But once they own it, and I'm not saying like you don't have a central security organization, we'll get there in a minute. But once they own it, then they realize, hey, we have to answer for this. And they generally will embrace it. Developers aren't really fools like all the security guys think we are. And I'm a security guy now, right? I mean, I've been for 10 years. So I'm like, if you're on the security side, I'm with you. I want these systems to be secure. If you're on the development side, well, I'm not a developer anymore except by hobby. But I know the process, and I sympathize with the process. So security through consulting doesn't work either. So it's just an sucky because, again, it's a step in the right direction. And then actually you may need something like that because your AppSec embedded person may not understand all of the privacy issues or compliance issues. They may be an engineer. They're dealing with design issues, technical issues, classic AppSec issues, not the non-AppSec security issues. So you still need those consultants around for those. But those tend to be more constant, standardized kind of approaches to things. The application security issues are changing constantly. And so you need those embedded teams. So I forgot to mention on the first slide, you may have been wondering, why is Spock on there picking that guy's nose? He's not picking his nose. Hopefully, if you're young, you may not remember, the classic Star Trek. You may never seen it, but you probably know who Leonard Nimoy is at least. But what's going on there is the mind meld, right? It's the Vulcan mind meld. And that concept is a metaphor I've used for what we're doing at my company right now. By the way, I don't have anything to sell from the company. It just happens to be I work for them. I'm not here representing them. I don't even know if they know I'm here. But it's, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's, you know, our communications department is probably going to get mad at me when they realize I didn't ask for approval. But it's, nevertheless, this is the model metaphor I've used. The Vulcan mind meld. I say DevSec, but you can say DevSecOps. It's melding the mind of security and the mind of developers into one mind, right? We want to get, it's really transforming in both directions. It's not just we're getting developers to start thinking about security. That's what we want to do as security folks. But we also need security to start thinking like developers. So we need to bring the minds together. The security folks, in order to adapt to a DevOps environment, which is with us to stay. If you're still hoping it's a fad and it's going away, I don't know what to tell you. But it's not a fad. I mean, it is working extremely well for product development teams and for companies' profits and that sort of stuff. So it's going to stick around. They maybe have a new evolution, but it's not like we're going backwards to old waterfall. Okay, if you're embracing waterfall and you think, oh, it's just a matter of time, let's wait it out. We're going to go back. The sanity will finally return, and we'll be back at waterfall. It isn't going to happen. Embrace the chaos, and then let's try to bring some order and security into that chaos. And melding the mind of development and security is one way of doing that. So all of those solutions I went through that were sucky or very sucky, right? One of their problems is, one of the issues, the main issues is they just don't scale very well. If you've got 70 or 100 teams, how are you going to do any one of those mechanisms I was talking about, and I gave various reasons why, in such an environment? It just doesn't happen. You have to have distributed security model. You need to embrace the idea of a distributed security model. Doesn't mean you don't have a central function still, but when it comes to product and application security, 90%, if not more, of those decisions being made need to be made in those individual teams. And you won't have to get there tomorrow. It's not like, okay, we're just moving from here to here, flip the switch, and now we're doing it. No, it's going to be a process. But you need to have a goal in mind. You need to have an objective you're aiming for and be approaching it in the right way if you're going to ever get there. So I've switched, as you noticed, to kind of the Star Trek motif and theme now because of the mind meld. So all that other stuff was sort of introduction. Now I got like 5 minutes to give you the whole talk. No, it's product security, and I've kind of mentioned some of this, so I won't just be repetitive. But the scalability issue, they move so fast in the DevOps world, extremely fast. You've heard the statistics, right? In Amazon's case, I can't remember what the number is, but it's absurd how many changes are being made on a daily basis. And in a continuous deployment, I mean, it's absurd. Look at the statistics. You would be amazed and shocked, right? And you cannot scale and you cannot move quickly with anything other than having the expert there making the decisions with people all the time. Just like they do, how are we going to do this? How are we going to design this? What are we going to do? How are we going to scale? How are we going to do that? You need someone there all the time with them. And that person has to have the competence to make those decisions. You just don't deputize someone to make those decisions that doesn't know it. So you're going to have to train them. Hire them or train them, right? And the whole last thing there about the complexity is why AppSec is different in some ways. It just changes all the time. You can't simply state a policy, a requirement, and say this is the way it's going to function. The solution, just like writing software, is that Fred Brooks wrote No Silver Bullet. We all like to say no silver bullet, right? That's from Fred Brooks, right? One of the designers of the 360 architecture many years ago, taught at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Where was I going with no silver bullet? Don't remember. Woo! So anyway, it is, the issue with no silver bullet is software is inherently complex. It's thought stuff. It is inherently complex, and you cannot reduce the essence of that complexity. You can only reduce the accidents, to use philosophical terms, essence and accident. So you can only reduce the accidents of the complexity. You cannot reduce the essence of the complexity. And trying to reduce the essence of the complexity through something is the silver bullet approach. It's going to slay the werewolf of complexity. Not going to happen. Same thing with application security. Same problem, right? So the ownership challenge is what I was talking about. They need to own it. They need to own it because that complexity is in the team. They need to be responsible for that, for the security of that system they're developing. And it works very well in the classic DevOps. Now it's classic, right? It's been around for a few years. DevOps model. We just haven't injected security into that across the board. We've done it some places, but not widely. Some companies are, obviously, Netflix is one of the leaders in this field, but there are others. Guy here from Capital One, I think spoke just before here. Capital One has embraced it. ING has embraced it. A lot of companies have embraced it that are highly regulated, as well as the high-tech startup companies. So, okay. Culture clash. This is another challenge, but I'm going to slip right through this. There's the classic cultural issues between security folks and development folks that you can overcome by embedding these folks in there, right? And I've already mentioned this a number of times, but it's what DevSecOps is all about. Building that expertise into the teams or hiring the expertise. Hiring's too expensive. Build it in. And, but this last line here is critical, is you don't just simply say they own it. You need to make sure they know what they're doing, okay? And it is a process to get there, but you've got to relinquish the control. It's very scary to the security guys. Relinquish the control, conceptually at least. We are going to push this out. We're going to push this into these teams. We're going to train them. We're going to, quote unquote, empower them. We're going to watch them for a while, maybe years, make sure they're doing things well, but we'll continue to step back and they'll own it more and more and more. And believe me, I've seen it. It's not pie in the sky thinking. They will rise to the challenge. If they're empowered, if they're trained, if they know what they're doing, they love security. Security is a sexy, awesome thing. These developers want to learn more about security generally. They just don't, and they haven't been exposed to it before. It's not been in their purview. So what did we do? And I gotta wrap this up really quick in like 3 minutes. How do you do such a thing? It sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? We have done it. It's like wildly successful, beyond what I thought, even in my secret hopes. I had this theory this is gonna work, right? Because conceptually it should. It's kind of like security champions. We're going to taking it to a next level. But has worked better than I expected. And we're not like some small, lean startup, okay, we don't have a very complex environment. No. This company's been around for over 20 years. They have tons of legacy systems that are crap, right? Riddled with security issues. And then we have the new guys offshore, not offshore like typical offshore use, but in companies we're acquiring around the world that are moving at the speed of light. Completely different model, completely different tool set than our legacy folks. And we've got all sorts of stuff in the mix. So we have a very challenging environment, distributed all over the world. I end up having these mavens are distributed all over the world in these teams. So it's difficult for me to manage, to lead it, but it is working extremely well. So, but one of the first things you have to do is you have to sell the idea. You have to understand the philosophy and sell the idea. And one of the key things that executives understand is money, right? And when you realize this, I'll just give you our numbers. It's roughly, we spend roughly, training and travel sound like a lot of money for a moment, but when you realize we've got like 40 something experts now. They're in process. Some of them are really strong. Some of them are not as strong, but they're in process, and we phase it in. We're roughly spending about $250,000 a year on the program. I don't know that will sustain forever. We'll build up a body of folks large enough at some point that we don't need to keep doing that. But that's training and travel, because you got to do stuff to unite them as a guild. You need to build camaraderie amongst the team. They're independent in their own teams, but there's this guild model where they're sharing the information they're learning as well, inspiring one another, cross-pollinating. They become this group that is driving security on self-propelled in the product development organization. So it's pretty awesome. But you think of $250,000 a year, and like I said, how much is it going to cost just to hire one person? Right, this is extremely cost effective. There's a lot of other things to sell it as well. Some key things: fund it from the security organization. Don't just, again, say the edict, we're going to do this, and now you guys all have to pay for it, product development. They just go, screw you, you know, that's ridiculous. You know, you're going to dictate to me what I need to do, and then you're going to not fund it? Fund it. It'll actually be extremely positive experience then. They'll say, hey, you're giving us something. You're investing in our people. You're giving us some payback for actually starting to embrace security. Fund it. It's not that much money. Look how much money you spend on Splunk this year. It's ridiculous, right? This is peanuts in comparison, right? And if you're doing it on a very small, if you're a small company, it'll work too. You just do it on a smaller scale. We got a pretty large mass of folks. We got about 2,000 to 3,000 developers in the organization. So we're scaling this. We're scaling it out, but we're right now at a point where we've only got about less than 50 of these experts. But it's growing very nicely. So don't skimp. Don't say, okay, we're going to just build our own little training modules and kind of do that, you know, because that we can do for very, very little money. We're sending them to expensive training classes, the same stuff you guys want to go to if you're a security folk, and conferences. They go to DEF CON, and they love it, and they get inspired. They go to things like this. I think there's actually some of our guys here somewhere. Hey, Anil, good to see you. So it fund it well. One of the key things is, I'll step through this really quickly. Sorry for this. I've got how much time do I got? Just a couple more minutes. Make it appealing. Security is fun. Make it a fun experience to be a part. We've got people clamoring to become part of this team now. They want it, to be on it. It's growing and growing and growing. I'm getting them from all over the place, including the infrastructure folks. It's the cloud governance folks want to be a part. It's cool. It's that they really like the program. They're thrilled with it, and even HR is thrilled with it because it is actually helping with retention. It's helping with job satisfaction, motivating people. We're investing in them. They're going, this company really invests in us, and they let us do all this fun stuff. You know, so it's we have like team building events. We go off and do fun things together, and it's not really that expensive when you look at it from the big picture deal. Okay, so I stepped through some of this stuff. A big gotcha is here. You do need to give them authority. If they're going to own security, they have to have the authority. It's not all or nothing, though. You will get there gradually, but you do have to relinquish that thing. Okay. Really quick, why should I trust a Vulcan, right? Why should a developer trust that you're going to do being good for them? Well, it's awesome for developers. It's a total win thing. There's no downside to this, right? They're getting trained. The development management, this is what you need to sell it to. We started out selling it to the president of my company. He embraced it. Then I sold it to his directs. Then I sold it to the directs of those VPs, and the directors all more or less, maybe 90% embraced it. And then we sold it to the folks in the trenches. And we had them apply. Do not appoint them. That's one of the pitfalls to avoid. Do not appoint them or have them appointed, because then they just become like that liaison, that figurehead of the security folks. You want them to be motivated and interested to learn security. So you need to have them apply. And initially you won't have one on every team because you won't have folks applying from every team. That's okay. So it will grow organically, and you have safety nets in place as you're moving in this direction. Okay, so it's really a big win for secure development, and the way you sell it to them is, we're going to give you freedom. We're going to remove those gates. You're going to be able to make the decisions yourself, and they will love that. They say, but you're going to have to embrace this training process and this guild process. So for security, it's really where I got most of the resistance, and I'm in security. I report to our CISO, and he's supportive of it, but I have had some resistance in security. And because they feel like they don't trust them, right? They're not going to do a good job, or we're losing control. And you know, as a security guy, I can say we're all kind of control freaks, right? We want to, I think I'm running out of time. So it doesn't mean you're going to not have the safety net. You're still going to provide the leadership, the vision role, and the oversight. And then, but you are, and the real goal if you're in security should be to secure your systems, not to protect yourself, right? Protect the resources and the products you are, and that you are overseeing. And this will get you there faster than trying to do it those other ways. So why is it good for the company? I've already mentioned some of this. Our company loves it. HR thinks this is the greatest program we have, right? It's because, and we have open environments as well. We do our own conferences. We're having one in Nashville next year. We're hosting it, and we're opening it up. We're gonna, who knows, maybe we can start our own little Derby Con there, but whatever, Music City Con or something like that. So it's, it enhances our company's reputation. It's giving back into the community because we don't just train our people, but we open up stuff for other people to come in and be a part of as well. It's really cool. There's so much stuff you could do with this. So it's, you just need to realize, I've got to empower these guys, I got to release some control, and I need to be willing to invest some money in it. You need to sell it to your leaders. Okay, I already said this, we had a huge, huge increase. Teams that had no interest in security, honestly, I'm not exaggerating, they just didn't care. And they are now like, hey, they're driving stuff themselves. And then their managers of our security mavens are getting involved, and their directors are getting involved. And they're all going, hey, who else can we get involved in this program? This is awesome. And they really care about security now. And they're making the decisions, you can see that, in their products that I don't have insight to sometimes until after it happens. I go, oh, you guys did that? Awesome. Because that's what we would have told you to do had we been present there. Now you guys know how to do it on your own. So it's just worked incredibly well. We've had some teams that were completely rebellious, in a sense, if you will, against security and against central control. Those guys have now most embraced this program. And one of their guys is this kind of global, emerging global AppSec expert I was telling you about. So he loves it. It's like found a new career for himself, even though he's still in development. He's still writing code, and he's still part of that team, but he loves the whole thing. This is like the ultimate, right? Not the ultimate, but I should say one of the really nice frostings on the cake there is you will develop this hive mind of the security experts. We've got our Slack channel where we all close it off so no one can see what we're saying, right? And we all talk amongst ourselves. And we constantly communicating with one another. I'm just the leader, right? But we've got all these folks in this team now, back and forth. What do you think about this? Hey, one just went to OWASP, AppSec USA, right? Several of them went there. One came back and said, hey, I had 2 talks. They were saying contradictory things. I want to submit it to the hive mind. What do you guys think? And it generates all of this engaging conversation and research and all that. So it's cool. Okay, I'm shutting down. It's not the silver bullet. You're going to get resistance. The individuals must be motivated. And if they're not, you've got to remove them from the program gracefully. You have to have strong management support, especially of the mavens. They can't be said, hey, you're a maven, but you can't think about security. We've got too much for you to do. You want to avoid the individualist who's really not interested in being part of the security conversation globally, because they do need to share. They do need to cooperate. You will still have to care for give the strategic vision, and you still have to keep momentum, or it will fizzle out. You know, this distributed organization needs something to pull it together. That's why we do group events together. We pull people from all over the world and do things together. We provide this unification kind of framework for them. And just some essentials. I already mentioned some of this. So I will not go through that again. The next gen, right? That's not really next gen, but it's the latest and greatest, Star Trek. This main thing is this cascading effects. What we're trying to do is now create a multi-tiered thing where these folks are now training other people, right? We train them, and they're training other people. And so it's beginning to cascade down, and it's going to grow, hopefully, geometrically, right? So that's it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. So I don't know if I have time for questions, but do I have any time? I think there's a talk coming in. No? Okay, I got to get out. Guys, if you do have questions, I'm happy to talk. You can figure out what my personal email address is there as well. You can see the pattern. So it's, communicate with me through email. I'm not a big Twitter guy, but I do respond if you send me a message. And I don't post a ton occasionally, but definitely you can connect with me any one of those ways. I'd be happy to connect. I'm sure I have more to learn from you than you probably have to learn from me, but I'd love to connect with you guys. So by all means, connect with me. Thank you so much. Sorry for running late.